Hello, my name is Roger Gitonga, and I'll be taking you through Chapter 5, the Business Organization Structure and Strategy. And the very first thing we're going to be looking at is what is an informal organization. Now, you realize that there are times when you'd want to maybe go out for lunch during lunch hours, and you would maybe choose a friend that you'd want to go for lunch with. Now, an informal organization is not necessarily created by the company, but it is one of those organizations that are formed when you want to build up friendship with your colleagues or your workmates, and you realize that with that bond that is created, you form up the informal organization. So it usually consists of social relationships, informal communication networks, behavioral norms, and power influence structures. Now, one of the benefits of the informal organization is employee commitment. We as humans love to socialize. We are indeed social beings. So when our social needs are met, what happens here is that, and if they're actually met in the company, then we would actually love to work. We would actually love to go to work, and you'd find that you'd become more committed to the company. Knowledge sharing tends to occur a lot because you end up talking with your colleagues, with your workmates freely and openly. They can tell you about new things that have come up, and you tend to learn quite a lot. It is even faster. It's faster because you realize that the times when you'd want to tell someone something, and you might not want to go through the whole process of sending an email. You might just want to walk to their door or to their office and just tell them, I want you to do this and this and this. So you find that it is faster. Now, what we're looking at here is an organizational structure that was created by Mintzberg. He said that maybe most of the companies would have a structure that would look like something like this. And on the topmost, we have the strategic apex. You find that the strategic apex deals a lot with the vision of the company. Where does the company want to go to? What is the strategy of the company? What are the goals of the company and the likes. At the same time, we have the middle line who deals with the middle term goals of the company. They try to find ways of how they can execute those goals that have been set by the strategic apex. The operating core tends to do the donkey work. You'd find that for them, they would be the ones to work on a daily basis, the ones who will focus on day-to-day achievements and objectives and goals, and they'll basically do what the middle line has instructed them to do. The technostructure, just from the word techno, this is they deal with the technical bits of the company. Now, what I mean by this is that they deal with or try to find better ways of getting better output. They try to find ways of making their processes more efficient. So you'll find here a lot of the analyzers, the planners, mostly the research and development department. Then at the support staff, we're going to be finding the cafeteria, the cleaners, the legal staff. So you find that they really support the company in different aspects. Now, we're also looking here at different structures. We're going to start with the functional department. Now, the functional department, we'd want to first start with what a function is. So a function is basically the purpose that something has or the job that someone or something does, and therefore here we group together people who do similar tasks. For example, we'll have the marketing department. They all focus on marketing. We'll have the accounting department who will focus on accounting. So you find that those are the tasks, similar tasks that they all do in that department. Now, it tends to avoid duplication of departments and enables economies of scale. Now, what I mean here is that if in your company you have a marketing department, you will not also have another marketing department. So you will not find a duplication or a copycat of the same department, because everyone will be able to do what they have been called to do, what they specialize in. So if I specialize in accounting, I'll only be found in the accounting department. Now, with the product and brand department, what I like to do here is to give examples. Let me give you an example of Coca-Cola, for instance. You find that Coca-Cola tends to sell different types of sodas. So they might have a department for every type of soda, be it Coke, be it Sprite, be it Fanta, and the others. Okay, and they'll also want to monitor the performance of each product. Okay, you might find that maybe Coke is selling better than Sprite, and they would ask themselves why. So it would be very easy to be able to analyze each product on its own and know how it's performing, so that you'll be able to know which one to drop and which one to continue producing. Now here we also have the geographic departmentation. Now this is when there are regional offices, where all offices have their functional departments, but the regional office reports to the head office. So you find here that you have different branches across the country, and with every branch they have their own functional departments, but they will all have to report to the head office. Now they're also in more contact with customers and suppliers, and will be able to target what each market needs. Now this tends to happen a lot because if you have branches spread out across the country, then they're able to address the issues that are faced in the regions that those departments or branches are found. Now, duplication and loss of economies of scale might be lost, because you'll find that since you have branches in every region in the country, then you will have so many marketing departments in every region, in every branch. You'd find maybe many accounting departments, in different branches. So there's a lot of duplication that occurs. Now, with divisionalization, one key difference with divisionalization and geographic departmentation is that with divisionalization, they do not necessarily have to report to the head office. Okay, they do not rely on the head office for excessive management support. They are autonomous. Autonomous basically means they are independent. Okay, so you find that for them, they are in charge of their own profit and loss. Okay, basically how you make your profit or whether you get a loss, that is your problem, but you'd find that you have to be responsible or accountable to the head office, because remember, with the head office, they will still want to know whether you're performing well or not. The good thing with divisionalization is that it gives more authority to junior managers, and so grooms them for more senior positions in the future. Now, metrics and project organization. What I would want to do here is just to give you an example. You'd find a lot in such an organization, what tends to happen is that you might be reporting to two different people. Okay, now for instance, maybe I'm a project accountant. So as a project accountant, I might report to the project manager, but at the same time I might report to the finance manager. So you realize I'm reporting to two different people. Now, the problem with this type of organization is that it threatens or tends to bring conflict between functional managers and project managers. You'll find that project managers would have one interest, while the functional manager would be in this case, finance manager would have his own interests, and they tend to conflict. Okay. Another disadvantage is that with the individual, maybe the accountant, the project accountant, he would suffer stress because every manager, both managers have their own demands, their own interests, So you'd realize that it would be too much for the individual to carry. Now, the good thing with it though is that it is more flexible, okay, with people, the workflow, there'll be greater workflow. At the same time, decision making is faster. You realize that if one person is in the center of it all, he knows what is happening and he can report immediately to the finance manager, and they're able to make a decision based on a certain project. Now, the Shamrock organization, if you can look at it, the Shamrock tends to look like a leaf, isn't it? Now, this Shamrock leaf originates from Ireland. Now, Charles Handy believed that most companies tend to have these four types in their company. You'll find that we have the professional, we have the self-employed, we have contingent, and the one below down there is the consumers. Now, one special thing about this is that with the professional, they're the ones who define what the company does. So if you have many accountant professionals, then it means that your company is an accounting firm. All right, and at the same time, we have the self-employed. Now, the self-employed are the outsourced companies. They're the ones who provide services to you on a project-to-project basis. So there are times when you'd want security. So you'd find that you'd outsource the security services from a company. So that company is self-employed, but they're providing that service to you. So they become part of the organization. We have the contingent workforce. Now, with the contingent workforce, you'll only need them or rather they only become part of the company when you need their services. So you find for a consultant, you might call a consultant maybe once in a month, and they at that time they will, if you do not call them, they might suffer temporary unemployment or temporary idleness. At the same time, you have the consumers. Now, it was interesting that Charles Handy introduced the consumers. He believed that there are times when maybe a consumer has bought something from you, but they could use the DIY method. Now, the DIY means do it yourself methods, where you might maybe, let's say, deliver a table, but the table is not assembled, it's in pieces. So you send the pieces of the furniture or the table to the consumer, and give them also a manual on how they can be able to set up the table once they receive the pieces at their respective destinations. Now we also have here the tall and flat organizations. If you realize, the tall organizations tends to have many layers, while with the flat organizations it has very few layers. Now if you also compare the distance between the topmost individual and the one below, there is a very huge distance. Now that distance is what we call the scalar chain. The scalar chain is a chain of command from the most senior to the most junior. And you realize with the tall organization, you have a very narrow span of control. Now, quick reminder, span of control is the number of subordinates that directly report to you. So if you realize with the tall organization, there are around 2 people who are reporting to the topmost person up there. But for the flat organization, he might be controlling around 6 people, okay, who directly report to him. Now, offshoring. What is offshoring? Now, just a quick reminder of, do you remember what outsourcing is? So outsourcing was where you'd find, maybe for instance, you're not able to do a certain service, so you give it to someone else to do it. So for instance, I would give the example of security, because you might not take the initiative to take someone up and train them and then become a security guard. You might maybe hire a security company to provide for you such services. So that is outsourcing. With offshoring, what tends to happen here is that you now go beyond just the local market, and you go to a company abroad to provide for you those services. I'll give you a good example here. Maybe you want to make roads in your country. So what you tend to do is that you might not look for a contractor in your country, but you might go to maybe China and have a contract with China and tell them, I want you to build roads in my country. So you've outsourced it, but you've outsourced it to a country that is outside your own country, or to a company that is outside your own country. With the shared services, what you tend to find here is that, I want to give just a small example as well. Let's say we have countries, we have a company that has branches in Kenya, South Africa, and Egypt. But you realize that maybe with all this, they would want to find a way to reduce their costs. So what they do is that they have one accounting department for the 3 countries. So you'll find that maybe in Kenya will do the accounts for the company in South Africa and also in Egypt. Now you'd ask yourself, how would they be able to get the information? So you'd realize that South Africa would have hired someone to at least input data, so that, and also the same thing would happen for Egypt, so that what would happen is that the accounting department, which will be based in Kenya, will be able to receive all this data through their computers, through the hardware, through the server of the company, and be able to at least try and analyze the transactions that have occurred and be able to close the books of accounts of the company. Now, the Anthony hierarchy. Anthony came up with 3 levels, okay? Now, I don't want you to confuse Anthony hierarchy with, I do not want you to confuse Anthony hierarchy with the Mintzberg, okay? Anthony focuses on strategic, tactical, and operational. So you'll find that strategic deal a lot with the long-term plans of the company. Tactical find a way to achieve the long-term plans of the strategic management, and so they deal with medium-term goals and decisions. And then the operational management will deal with routine works, and they'll try to find a way to achieve the tactical plans of the middle management or the tactical management. So they basically deal with short-term matters. Okay. Thank you so much. I hope you learned. I hope you enjoyed it. Do have a good time.